Peace, everybody. This is Piensa from Nomadic Massive, welcoming you to Autres Langues. As we make our way towards Nomadic Massive's 20th anniversary, we thought it was important to highlight some of the individuals in the communities that helped shape and inform hip-hop culture and continue to inspire us to this day. I'm here with my co-hosts, Waahli, aka Salvador Waahli, Butta Beats, aka The Facts, and Ali Sepu, aka Chili Hendrix. You're now part of the Universal Super Fam. Let's go.
Hold on. Pardon me, sir, did you say something? Ladies and gentlemen. Hold on. What the hell are you talking about? Hold on. Pero si ya hemos empezado.
We got some very, very, very special guests in the house tonight. Well, while he's doing a double duty tonight, he's kind of like the guest and the host at the same time because, you know, there's some special things we want to discuss.
He's got a story to tell.
He's got a story to tell.
Many hats.
Sitting right next to Waahli, we have a longtime member of Nomadic Massive, extended family forever, of course.
Sister from another mister.
We talking about MC extraordinaire,
Whoa.
singer extraordinaire,
Whoa.
radio show host, community activist.
Oi.
Tack the compliment.
Oh my goodness.
All right, take the thumps, thumps. Everybody, please make some noise for our sister, Tali and Dawn, a.k.a. I Am Black Girl, a.k.a. Tali Taliwah.
What up?
You
It's
got another
really,
one?
really nice. Do I have another one? Mom.
Mom's
AKA Mom.
Mom's a good one. Mom's an important one.
Yeah, it's blessed to be here. Thank you so much.
We're super happy to have you. And last but not least, standing to my left, we have a very special person with a lot of history here in Montreal.
Say word.
We're actually blessed to have him in the room with us tonight. We're talking about a pioneer DJ. And when we say DJ, we're not only talking about the guy who supports the MC, you know, but also a radio DJ. Anybody who knows Montreal Hip Hop knows about Il Groove Garden. We're seeing this 25-year anniversary shirts.
Yep.
We want to get our hands on those.
Yep.
All right. Everybody, please make some noise. Member of another classic Montreal group, known worldwide, Butta Babees.
Yep, that's right.
Everybody put your hands together
Yeah.
for Ziplocks in the house tonight.
Hey, what's going on? Much thank you. Pleasure to be here, man. Enjoying the space and getting to see all these faces I've seen from time put in work on the scene in Montreal. So blessings to be here, man.
Thank you for being with us. We appreciate it. The first thing I wanted to ask, and this is a question that goes for the three of you, could you paint a picture of what it was like for you in the neighborhood that you grew up in Montreal, I guess in the early 80s, might be a good time frame.
Ladies first.
No. Wow. So I grew up in the northwest end of the city we called it Uptown. It was the northwest end of Côte des Neiges, and it was really the corner of the English Caribbean community of Montreal. There was also like a Jamaican enclave in NDG, but in Côte des Neiges we were a mix of people from other small islands. I lived on Vizina at the corner of Victoria.
Ooh.
And on my block, it was like we lived in a tall apartment building. There were like 3 apartment buildings of the same. And then towards the end of the block was where the Hasidic community, Jewish Hasidic community lived. So there was a school, an Orthodox school at that corner. It's still there. Facing my building, like I could literally have rolled out of bed and gone to this school, was at the time an English school called, elementary school called Coronation. It's now called École des Nations. And on Victoria were a lot of the Caribbean businesses, a couple of South Asian businesses as well, because there were some South Asian people living in the neighborhood. And it was in the 80s, it was like a fun time. Up the street, at the end of the street, was a high school called Northmount back then. It's called La Voix now. But back then, that high school had like 1,500 kids as capacity. And so they were kids who spoke English at home and were from everywhere, like from the Caribbean, South Asia, Philippines, Greek kids, you know. It was a real mix. And a lot of my older cousins went to that high school. Church was a part of our life back then. Used to go to St. Paul's Church, which was a little bit further up on Côte St. Catherine. The metro was like sort of pretty much established, the Montreal metro system, but it was still kind of fresh back then.
Plamondon would have been
Yeah,
the stop?
Plamondon was the stop. We had some of the landmark spaces in that around that area are still there, like the KFC. They're never gonna kill this KFC over there.
Barkley and
you know what I mean?
Every Tuesday,
$2 chicken.
Doomsday, Toonie Doomsday.
You know what I mean? But yeah, we used to play in the schoolyard. They used to have blockos around there in the schoolyard in front, or at Northmount. I had older cousins who were DJs. And our families were, you know, working, a lot of working women, working class folks. My mom worked in healthcare. A lot of mothers worked in healthcare. Other people were working in homes as domestic workers, people working in factories and things like that. And it was kind of like an innocent time as well. And we just knew Côte des Neiges. We just knew Uptown, really. You know, you used to go up to Côte des Neiges Plaza, and that's as far as you went. You didn't go much. I didn't know that there was even a French kind of corner or area to my neighborhood until I was much older. Like, our mothers worked at the Jewish General Hospital in Côte St. Catherine, and that was about it. That was our radius, like Côte St. Catherine, Côte des Neiges, down to not even Jean Talon, not even Jean Talon. You didn't exactly. It would be Décotré, you know. Down to DeCarry, because we go to DeCarry Square. But that was our radius. And we just all lived over there. And what is the IGA in that strip mall on Plamondon? That used to be a spot called Steinberg's. That was a grocery. That was a grocery. Right? Steinberg's. That was the grocery store. And that's where we used to go to do our groceries. And yeah, it was primarily, I mean, it was an English neighborhood, that's for sure, and very Caribbean.
Moi, j'ai grandi dans les années 80. Au début des années 80, moi, j'ai grandi dans le quartier Saint-Michel, qui est à l'est, complètement à l'est de Montréal, dans un quartier qui était qui avait une forte population haïtienne, de diaspora, donc on était, je pense, à 60 à 70% haïtiens, et il y avait aussi une communauté italienne aussi qui était présente là-bas, qui ont 10%, et puis aussi des Québécois aussi qui étaient aussi là, mais qui étaient en petit nombre. Moi, le quartier, au début des années 80, il y avait l'école Joseph-François Perrault, c'est l'école secondaire où j'ai gradué et tout.
Good for you. You went to high school, you did it.
Je paye ma 12. Qu'est-ce que j'aimais beaucoup dans ce quartier-là, c'est que toutes les activités au début des années 80 pouvaient se faire dans le quartier Saint-Michel. On avait des fêtes de sous-sol d'église, like, il y avait comme pas des maisons des jeunes comme aujourd'hui qu'on les connaît, mais il y avait un centre communautaire où on pouvait aller là-bas et puis jouer avec d'autres jeunes du quartier et puis faire des activités, et puis que ce soit aller au parc ou aller à la bibliothèque, prendre des livres et puis écouter de la musique et tout. Mais c'était un quartier qui était, quand j'ai grandi là-bas, ça vibrait beaucoup. Les communautés s'établissaient. C'était comme une deuxième vague qui s'établissait à Saint-Michel. Donc, beaucoup de gens commençaient à avoir un pouvoir économique, donc pouvoir acheter des maisons et puis pouvoir s'installer. Donc, il y en a beaucoup qui sont quittés pour aller à RDP, mais Montréal-Nord aussi c'était très une forte communauté haïtienne. Et moi, j'ai grandi avec mon frère et ma mère et ma tante. Et puis, la musique était très présente aussi dans ces moments-là. Et puis, je pense que, avant de sauter les étapes, là, mais je veux dire que il y avait beaucoup de DJ qui faisaient beaucoup de fêtes, comme on parle de DJ Bass, DJ Silk. Il y a beaucoup de ces DJ-là qui eux autres, apportaient vraiment de la vibe dans le quartier. You know?
See, me, I'm on the opposite. I'm all the way kind of living out in the West Island when hip-hop dropped. And I guess some of my first memories are elementary school, and we had a talent show. And I remember the track Rocket came out, and we was Herbie Hancock, and we was bopping that. I had this gym teacher who, for those times, was like into like this young movement of hip hop. And he's like, I was always, breakdancing and doing my thing. I was always into sports, so we did a show, and I just that was one of my first memories of hip hop. And I remember we took it to the point where we would go by, there was a little ice cream shop, and because we could get cardboard from there. So we'd get our cardboard and we'd lay down our cardboard and we'd be breakdancing, and people would come. And then I remember they used to be like, okay, you guys is breakdancing. You know what? You guys can get some free ice cream. Can you come back next Sunday? So that was like my first paid gig. I got paid 2 ice cream.
But was it?
I got paid in ice cream cones.
But was it? I mean, because you got to describe what the West Island.
Oh, the West Island. The West Island is
about
like
suburbs.
And this is in the 70s. I was one of me, my brother, me 4 or 5 black kids in our school. At best, no black teacher, no black anything. And see, my parents used to bring me each Saturday down to on de Maisonneuve. They had the black library, and they had black schools. I'd go down there and I'd get my lessons about my culture and all the rest of that. When I was young, but even NCC building was still then and available. We would march down there. So I was connected to the black community. Another big way was through sports, was through basketball. And that was the other beautiful thing about hip hop back then is the biggest part about your basketball team would be during warm up and what mixtape you could play during warm up. And I had one of my dudes that would travel to go play ball in the States, and he'd get mixtapes from Kiss, and he'd bring them back, and we would bang that, and you don't really care about the score at the end of the game, but we would win the warm up. That's what it was about, man. Again, I'm even thinking back to it as this is all coming out. Sound Supreme show. Montreal, the Sound Supreme show again, CKUT, the same station I'm on now. Back then it was Flight was on the mic.
And even before, there was Club 980.
Bam!
With Mike Williams.
Yes.
And Butcher T. And Club 980 was an AM station, and Mike Williams ended up going to Much Music and was a VJ at Much Music. I mean, I was still kind of young in the early part of the 80s when like a lot of hip hop tracks started coming out. But I was just learning that in the late 70s, speaking of CKUT, Howard Stretch Carr, who's a host of West Indian Rhythms, which is a longtime Caribbean show, Saturdays 4 to 7, he had a record store. He had a record store, and he was selling records that eventually people like Butcher T would scratch, and they weren't hip hop records yet. They were just records that DJs, funk records and break records, But he was bringing that stuff up from New York. Eventually,
he was the first.
He was the first.
If you even document the first hip hop to cross the border, was Butcher T.
Butcher,
Butcher T, because Butcher T used to go down there with Stretch,
and
that's
son.
Like his nephew and all the rest of them. They'd go down and. Back then, the two of them, he had cousins that were from Toronto. He told me the story on the radio. They all would go to New York, and they were more into their disco still in Toronto and their funk. And he was like, yo, this whole breakbeat thing, there's this thing coming out, it's hip hop. And Butch was like, okay, let me take some of these records out. And he said, Uncle Stretch, we could sell this at the store. And he's like, this young hip hop, what is this? What are we talking about?
Right.
It's not gonna last.
Especially because so many of us were still very much connected to Caribbean culture and Caribbean music. Like,
so was there pushback like in that regard?
I don't know
like,
that there was
parents,
pushback because I think the young, like this New York thing, really, the relationship with New York, I think for me anyway, really helped shape my black, like my Afro-Caribbean Canadian identity in this urban context in Montreal because my family in New York and the scenes in New York, I could at least relate to in a way that there was nowhere else in Montreal. If I wasn't in Côte-des-Neiges, or if I wasn't in a certain part of NDG, or if I wasn't down in Bergs, there was nowhere else for me to see myself or see anything that I connected to. Like, forget media, and not just Quebec media, forget Canadian media, right? So we had none of those images. We had no cultural products that would speak to our urban identity, Black urban identity, but New York did.
I know, like for me, I know a moment when I became a fan, and then I knew when I wanted to participate in the culture. You know, there's like this key moments, key triggers. I just wanted to see what you guys had to say about that. Like, when did you become a fan, and then when did you be like, yo, I could do this?
On my part, moi, j'ai découvert le hip-hop à travers CKUT parce que j'écoutais souvent Mike Mission, Masters at Work, and they were playing hip-hop, you know?
Fridays, right?
Saturdays
They
after
took over
Stretch.
from Sound Supreme show.
Yeah. And that's where I got introduced to hip-hop because they were playing a lot of the music that I could actually relate or I actually loved. I was like, what is this style of music? And I was like, and they were playing a lot of instrumentals too. They used to talk also a lot on the beats too as well because I was recording, I remember with my tape cassette.
Yeah.
I was
That tape.
you know, I was recording and then the next day, you know, just listening to all this music that they were sharing and then that they were playing on the radio station. And then it's really in '89 that I really fell in love with the culture in hip hop, you know, in 1989 when De La Soul came out, you know, and the CKUT played that song Say No Go. I remember I was recording it on my tape cassette, and I went nuts. I was just like,
What was it about De La Soul that you saw yourself in them?
I don't know, like it's something that. It was
I
a
saw
sense
True
of
Goy and I was like, that's my brother.
He's Haitian, you know.
I'm looking in the mirror.
You know, rest in peace.
Yes.
But no, I don't know. I think it was a sense of belonging because you know there was other artists like KRS-One I was playing, Eric B and Rakim, Public Enemy too. You know that I really like related to the message. But at that time, I didn't speak English that well. You know, I grew up from Haitian parents, so French and Haitian Creole was my first languages. So when I was listening to hip hop at that time, I couldn't understand most of the lyrics. But when I heard De La Soul, I don't know, for some reason, I felt like a sense of belonging right away. And I was like, and it forced me to learn the language too. And I felt I was different as a kid growing up.
You were different.
Still today.
Still to this day.
But yeah, I guess that's how I related to them.
Honestly, all of the credit has to go to my mother, Viola Daniel, who...
Hey, Viola.
Yeah.
What up, Viola? We love you.
And I guess it would have been like, I think it was 84 Beat Street came out.
Yes.
86 or
I
something
remember
like that.
going on a date to Beat Street.
And my mother, you talking about dates?
Yeah,
I
was,
I was
man.
very young.
I didn't pay no attention, man. She was very upset. I just watched the movie. What's up, Elise
Yeah,
Monk?
my mother took me to see Beat Street. My father lived in New York. I had a lot of family in New York, and I had cousins, like I had access to KRS-One and Public Enemy and stuff like that because I had cousins who were DJs and who were playing all kinds of music, but they'd have those records too. But when I saw that movie, that's really when I first started to see a culture, you know, and hear this music and see these dance moves and then also see the visual elements and all that kind of stuff. So I would say that I really I got hooked on it at that age, and I was only about 8 or 9 years old back then, at that stage of seeing the film. And then with time, it's funny you talk about 89, yeah, like with time, as I'm going through elementary school and a lot more of the Afrocentric stuff is coming out. Like I remember when I bought my lady's first tape, you know, and I remember the outfits and I used to have a t-shirt. I mean, I guess I was a little bit older at that point. Maybe I was about 12 or something. They had all of these t-shirts because, you know, the Afrocentricity stuff really started to pop off in the late 80s, you know, into the mid 90s. And I had the kente hat. I had a t-shirt. I had a t-shirt that said it was the continent of Africa. And it's funny that you're wearing these Malcolm X socks because it had all these like freedom fighters, you know, and it wasn't just Black Americans actually. I remember Lumumba was on it and Sekou Touré and all this stuff. And it was sort of like not a graffiti style, but portrait style stuff. And the back of the t-shirt said, "It's a Black thing you wouldn't understand." You remember that t-shirt?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yo, I had like 5 of them t-shirts and I remember getting on the 161.
Oh.
The Van Horn.
Going on Van Horn, going up to Côte des Neiges and going east to Côte des Neiges. And I remember this white lady was like, "That's a racist t-shirt." I was sitting on the bus. I'll never forget. She was right at the front.
Yeah.
And I was standing in front of her because I was just going to get off. And she said that to me. And I was like 12 or something. And I was like, well, that's the point. That's what it said. You wouldn't understand. And I got off,
Exactly.
But like.
And this is how Tali.
Mic drop.
But that was it. That was, it was all of the elements sort of all at once. And then when I was about 13, I got connected to like my own music, like getting access to music. And I remember somebody gave me a tape of like De La Soul and then I started collecting my tapes and really curating my own collection of just cassettes that were copies that I'd buy on Flatbush Ave in Brooklyn from somebody's briefcase.
Yep.
You know what I mean? When we go down on the down on the bus trip, or you'd be taping Hot 97 if you were over there, But yeah, it started off really early for me.
I gotta tell you, when I look back when I talk about key moments in my young life of hip hop, there was a concert I really wanted to go to, man. Public Enemy was coming to Montreal.
Yo, 89.
And I was,
89.
Where was
and I was gonna say
Which
at
one?
James Lang High School.
James Lang
The
High
first
School.
one at James Lang High School.
No, but there was one before that. They were at Rainbow Heights.
Yes, true. They were at
Rainbow Heights in DC.
I know they've done that after, but
Yeah.
I don't know that. Yeah, there might have been one before that.
Yeah.
But that must have been 87, 88. I was in grade 9 or grade 10. And I was like, yo, Mom, Dad, can I go to this concert? What? No, you're not going to any concert.
In the cafeteria.
I said, okay. I'm going to go sleep over at Colin Walker's house tonight, okay?
We'll be back tomorrow.
I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Shout out
I said,
to Colin
okay,
Walker.
cool. Big up to Colin Walker, man. We got busted, but don't worry. So that's funny. We took two girls, two of us went, we get down, and we're from the West Island, we take a
How'd you
taxi
get down? You took a taxi?
I was like, yo, I'm saving up all my
How
allowance.
much?
Used to deliver Gazette for
not a
years.
cheap taxi.
How much was
holding
the
it up. I don't
taxi?
even remember. I didn't want to think about it. I was like, we are getting there.
$18.
We all get there. I was like, all in. Keep the change.
Right.
So we reached there, and I remember walking in, and I had my Adidas suit on. I'd been working on this outfit for time. And we there. I remember Strong Island Troopers, one of the first crews from
I'm
the
so
West
happy you
Island.
said that.
Yo, big up my man Lyndon, all the rest of them. They had the high tops, and they was all breakdancing at the warm-up. And then, you had Flavor Flav got on the mic, and I was just like, that's what I want to do. I want to be him. I want to be a dude like him. So I was always into, like, my goal wasn't even to be an MC. It was just like, I wanted to be a hype man.
And you always
and
were.
that's how I first got into the game.
Which was a serious role back then as well.
Oh, that was
right?
I don't know if they have
That was
hype
not a
men so
side
much
role.
anymore.
I mean, it depends on the artist. I think
It's just
I
with the
think-
ad libs. Like
I'm
they're
telling you.
their own hype men now.
Exactly.
And
Like Rick Ross is his own man. But yeah, I followed and I watched that, and that concert, I remember I got home. And then we ended up staying, because Colin said he was staying at my house, staying at his house. We ended up staying at the girl's house in the basement. We snuck out in the morning. We got home, and my parents were like, yo, I talked to Colin's mother. And I said, oh. I said, well, you know what? You're grounded for 2 weeks. I don't care. It was worth it. Fight the power. Fuck all you got. I don't care. You don't understand. It's a black thing you don't understand. So, yeah, man. I to this day, I'll be like, I don't care how long I was grounded. I sat up in my room. I said, it's worth it.
La 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 la. Yeah. Nomadic Massive. Nicholas Craven on the beats. Mantecoso with the flex. Let's go. Out of my mind, holding signs like the sin for action, twist and turn, prim and perm, no concern. We burning concoction, straight, heavy trimming, trap, wavy, MTL, dirty dancing era, Patrick Swayze, Gargamel, out of jail, Lincoln jail, make the pocket swell. Only to beat a man alone who build a citadel and live alone, too numb to tell. Spell it out, be Helen Keller Braille. Remember well, hollow $1, wishing well. Take the L.I. It's Chicago, fog in the goggles, get cushy with cushion lingerie.
lingerie models from paperback, cover the bottle to pushing snow through the nozzle, full throttle. They crash and burn. How many hymns for kings toppled? One's ambition is one's obstacle. Solution topical without getting to the root. The same tree but different fruit, skewed with the influx of loot. A million ways to dilute till it's too late in the queue. The game be ugly but they paint it cute. Fuck boys and they ill repute, but pay no mind. Been in the full swing of things since Shabba's tingling. Despite the snakes that slither in, my light never be withering. 360 degrees like Boston swiveling. Jump shots and dribbling through hot blocks is blistering. With those I rock close since we was snot nose and lingering. Son of the cosmos like breakfast spots and DG. They screw face thinking how deep is your love like they BG.
How much communication was there between the east side that was more French speaking and the west side that was more English speaking? Was language a barrier within the greater black community in Montreal?
First of all, I'd like to say a big shout out to Ken Tour. Ken Tour is the bus that used to bring us to New York, all the Haitian families. So when you pay like $30 and then you just
you meet by that McDonald's, right?
Yeah, exactly. By McDonald's.
I used to take that bus all the time for every weekend.
So in the parking lot of Namur, no?
No, Jean Talon near
that was the next
Saint-Laurent.
bus.
That was the next bus. We used to catch a bus. We used to catch a bus on Van Horn.
Say, okay, go check the Haitian bus.
It's true. You're right.
They have some extra spaces there.
Ken Tour.
There was some communication on that bus, for example.
It depended. I mean, because it really was a Haitian.
Oh yeah, I used to take the Haitian bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the 90s.
What were those rides like?
The rides were just like convivial, you know. Pour moi, c'est comme, you know, like
A lot of food.
a lot of food, you know,
of
a lot of, you know, people bringing like tons of stuff to give to their family in New York, you know.
It was the return bus that was a mess. 'Cause
Yeah.
your mother went shopping and it was like pack up full of bags.
Exactly, you
You're
know.
like-
I remember crossing the border all the time in these Haitian buses. We would spend like hours at the border.
Oh, trust me.
Everyone had a story, you know.
Everybody. And not everybody made it.
Not everybody made it. Some stayed at the
Right.
border, you know.
Had to wait for that bus to go back, right?
Yo, I remember being at the board and this lady's like, hey, listen, can you hold on to this alcohol for us until we get to New York? I was
right?
like, okay. Then we get to New York and then we're like, yo, where'd she go? And we go, oh, okay. Well, we've got alcohol for the weekends.
Right.
But language you're asking, eh?
Yeah, seeing if that was a barrier.
I mean, for me personally, it was a barrier, you know, because first of all, I was exposed to English rap. You know, there was not much French rap. So I got exposed to English American rap. So learning the language was also a challenge for me, you know, because I had to, you know, understand. But, you know, I didn't go that much to, you know, the west side of Montreal, you know. I stayed most of the time in Saint-Michel, Montreal Nord, and most of the parties played, you know, American rap. All the DJs, that's all they played. There was no French rap or Creole raps or any other languages. So that's what I was exposed to. So this is what we knew, and that's what we loved, and then that's what we just like embarked, you know, strongly. And then most people started to rap in English too. Haitians were rapping in English. I started rapping in English, but definitely I didn't have anything exposed as a French rap to be able like to, oh, you can actually do that as well, you know? So
French hip hop came much later.
French hip hop came a bit
Yeah.
much
And
later.
there were barriers, I think, that were larger than just us in the culture. You know, like just the division on the island, right? So geographically, west of Saint Laurent Boulevard was English, and east of Saint Laurent Boulevard was Francophone. And yeah, if you didn't really have a reason to go to either side, really, because our schools at that time, in our era of growing up, our schools were really divided in terms of French school, English school, and Bill 101 wasn't as tight when I started school, so I was allowed to go to an English school and I did French immersion. In terms of the hip hop scene, what I also just recently learned, because I was talking to the OGs, Shan Wan, one of the MCs with Lord Supreme, that crew, he said that they were down in Burgundy a lot or in DG, and they would connect with Haitian Haitian MCs that they might know, and they would connect and invite. I don't know who those Haitian MCs are, but when we were growing up in the 80s, I think there was a lot of tension between English Caribbean folks and Haitian folks.
Oh yeah,
like a huge,
big time,
a huge thing was to insult somebody, was to call them a Haitian bumbale, like that was whack. And that stuff stayed for a long time. Like we know some folks who grew up in Côte d'Ivoire who were Haitian, who today talk about how tough it was for them, because people weren't cool. And I think some of that stuff was definitely carryover from the whole separatist conversation, the political conversation here. But it created a divide all the way through. You know what I mean? It created divided in industry, in schools.
Yeah. How much did hip hop help bridge that gap, though?
Good point.
You know what? Well, we haven't said it. But Waahli and I know each other since, you were like 19, I was 17, since CJEP. And that was the first time that I really met. I knew there were Haitian folks. My mother had Haitian friends, so I didn't have any issue. But that was the first time I went to school in CJEP. So like after high school, I'm going to school with Francophone blacks, right? And they were at Vanier, and I was just like, what are y'all doing here? I was so surprised. But even then, we had beef. We didn't have beef, but there were issues in the school. There were separate crews. And Haitians were in the West Island also. But it was interesting that folks came over. And at times, I would say some of the tensions did kind of simmer down because of the music, because of the culture. So we were at the same parties, that type of thing.
I think that connected us, man.
It did.
Go ahead.
No, it did a lot, because I remember when I went to an English school, so totally went from like Saint Michel to all the way down to the west side to go to the English CJEP. I remember we were just a small crew of Haitian folks there, and I was going there to be submerged in English, to be able to learn also the language and also learn the music that I loved a lot, like the hip hop. But I remember at that time it was really hard to connect with other people from other community, from the English Caribbean, Well, I didn't know if they were listening to hip hop, but I was saying like just being there as black folks, basically, just black folks.
At Jake's.
Yeah, exactly. At the Jake's, exactly, or the Cage or whatever, So exactly. So to just connect, it was really hard, and it took time, And I remember connecting with a few people that are still friends today, like Tali and other people. And then it started little by little. But when there was like these socials, these social, and they played like a lot of hip hop, all blacks and all people from the school were going there. And that's where you were seeing the unified scenery, like people like really get down together, like just like, they didn't really care where you
from.
So
it was slow jams that brought people together.
Yeah, but it was crazy because when we were organizing,
that didn't hurt either.
But it was interesting because even though we were organizing parties and stuff together, like shows, right? We at that point, come CJEP, like Waahli had a crew, you had a crew, you were already in a group. I was dancing for a bunch of different folks some of whom are rappers still today and some aren't. And the Haitian folks were still rapping in English back then. Yeah. So I think that really, it held together, that unity, for a while, until I think there was another wave of separation when people started to rap in French and started to rap in French and Creole and could communicate with a much bigger audience.
I think one of the other big things that was Dubmatic.
Right.
And they, we as English artists, we're out there and we're plugging and we're barely selling anything and this, that, and the other. And then Dubmatic dropped and they boom, they sold platinum or I don't know what they sold out. And I was like, wait a minute.
We had MCJ and Cool G though.
Yeah.
We had
but most of it they sold in Quebec. Yeah. And they did tours in Quebec. And I think even as hip hop artists, I remember I think I was probably with Death Threat at the time it was before Butta Babees. And we were like, okay, well, maybe this is a whole other angle on it. We was always, and it's funny because the Haitian dudes would often come to us, and again, they would be speaking English. And they would be, trying to almost master Haitian accent by rapping. And I used to look at some of them and be like, yo, man, just spit it in your language, man. If that's what's up, then spit it in your language. And even at the radio show, they would come and they'd be able to drop bars, but some of them couldn't even handle an interview in English, you know? But it was, I think, again, there's the hip hop scene as in performers, but there's also the hip hop scene as in listeners. And the clubs, you talk about, you know, the center being Saint Laurent. But Saint Laurent, if you talk business, Steel Monkey, them spots back in the day, you would be bumping hip hop and you're dancing. You don't care what language or where the hell they're from. You just bumping and grinding on somebody and just having a good time, man. And whether it be guys or girls, be like, you know, hip hop parade and be bouncing back and forth. We connect through that, man. And that's how I made a lot of Haitian friends, you know, through that. And I also think about it too, because again, my also connection to the black communities through sports and through basketball. I remember going up to IMCO. I don't know if you remember IMCO. Like that was one of the biggest in the East End. That was
programs.
The big Haitian. I don't know if it was a community center, I guess, and they had their crew, and there was often beef, and everybody would be like, yo, we going up by IMCO, and I remember dudes being like, yo, should we pack a pistol or something like that? Like, we going up there, like it was hot.
It was hot.
And we'd get on the court, and it would get hot, but I remember a couple of them, I was being like, yo, like, it's all blood, it's all love, it's all competition, and be cool after, and then check each other in the club, and because we'd see each other and have that respect on the court, everything was cool. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it definitely was a segment and a separation. My dad used to work at a couple of different schools, and you would have some Haitian families that were going to their English school, and there would be friction between the Jamaicans. It was mainly, again, the Jamaicans and the Haitians. There was friction. But I would say hip hop, if anything, brought people together more than broke people apart.
And it's funny because I never understood where that beef was coming from, you know, like the source between the English, Caribbean, and the French, you know?
That was fueled a lot by the French separatists. And you know, they wanted to make that distinction, like, you're us. As a Haitian, you guys are with us. Because that often there was fights. You go in like Verdun or all these other different places between English and French. They used to fight all the time. Yeah. I remember the school in St. Thomas in the West Island. There were often fights between there was an English side and there was a French side, and these are white. They would just fight because just English and French at them times it was war. And
it reproduced.
They're fighting someone else's battle.
And I think, you know, that kind of the French were like, okay, Haitian people, like you with us,
like us,
you know, and Jamaicans, no, you're with us, you're not. And then after we're like, wait a minute, we as cousins, man. Why are we fighting their fight, man?
My mother told me a crazy story. My mother was a nurse. And 76 was the vote and the year that Parti Québécois got in, René Lévesque got in.
Yeah, big.
People like my mother who in their countries back in the Caribbean, they were for the workers and the labor parties in their countries. So in St. Vincent, my mother was for the Labor Party, and they were for change, and they were for socialism and all that kind of stuff. And that's what René Lévesque was preaching. And my mom told me this story about how they vote, Parti Québécois gets in, and then some things start to change with regards to the promises made. And she remembers getting a phone call about how she's gonna have to start doing French courses. She's already working as a nurse. She's working at an English hospital, and she gets a phone call. And they're like, yeah, you're going to have to start taking French courses. And so there's an information session at, I think it was Maison d'Haïti. Because at one point, Maison d'Haïti was on Jean Talon, I think. Yep. Yeah, so she says she went up to Jean Talon, her and some of her other colleagues. And they were supposed to be telling them. So they brought Haitian nurses to tell the English Caribbean nurses about how these French courses are going to go and what they got to do in order to keep their jobs. And my mom said she never forget that eventually in the session, the Haitian nurses were like, anyways, you guys better just move to Ontario because you're not going to learn French well enough to stay here.
It's like a hierarchy.
Yeah, it did happen. It did happen.
So when you got those kind of subtle messages coming through, you know what I mean? That stuff carries over. I'm not saying that I grew up in a home that was hating on Haitian folks, but for sure in the broader community, those things permeated. Those things like were navigated and were present,
and you inherit the beef.
Yeah, and it would create tensions for the youth at times.
After that election, there is a big majority and probably the most talented Montrealers, English-speaking Montrealers, black, migrated to Toronto.
After that first one, but then after 95.
Yeah, and then
95 election, that's that wave.
Yeah.
Yo, and there were beef back then. There was some major beefs, man. I remember being out at a Huntsick or I don't know what CJ playing ball out there, and they had to escort us out of the school because we were Vanier and we were in this French neighborhood, and for weeks leading up to the vote, there were fights on the metro. Remember them things where people were like pushing people on the subway? I remember this story of this woman pulling some dudes that were trying. A black lady was like, "If you're gonna push me over, I'm pulling you with me." Yo, it was intense. 95 was intense and whack, and that was for sure a huge exodus of not only English but English blacks who were a part of that era of foundational hip hop folks. So
Tara Chase, big up.
like exactly, Tara Chase. We went to elementary school together. I used to dance for Scooby-Doo. You know what I mean? And she was like, "I want to chase this thing, and I'm gonna go to Toronto," and even Strong Island Troopers, folks from Strong Island Troopers, they left the city. You know what I mean? Like so many people dipped out, and that I think caused a kind of suspension in a development and growth of hip hop, not hip hop culture, but rap performance, rapping in English. That whole aspect of it, it's got kind of stagnate right there.
It shifted completely.
And it shifted. It started to shift.
Towards
Montreal hip hop started to shift towards much more francophone hip hop and Creole francophone hip hop. To some of the artists that were coming out of Saint Michel. But other things bigged up, like other things started to dance blew up, graffiti was blowing up. You know, those other elements. But rap, you know, it kind of got frozen in time a little bit. People tried. People were hustling, but it was hard.
So now all of you guys, you know, the ones who stayed, you're part of a community that united you. And I wanted to ask you a bit about your work in the community as professionals and in the different facets that you guys give back. How would you say that hip hop culture influenced the way you tackle those responsibilities now in your public personas, your professional personas? I don't know.
You go first, Mr. Community.
Wow,
you go, Mr. Community.
See, look, my love for music, it's a part of me, and I bring it everywhere. The way I walk, talk is just, I'm a hip hop kid, right? So I start out there and I'm working with youth and trying to teach young people this and that. And I've always just been like, you know, work with whatever talent. I always try to find, if I'm working with you, what is their passion? What makes your heart beat? What makes you excited? And for many kids just like me, it was music. So one of the first spots I was working at was Youth in Motion. Back in the day, this in the middle of Little Burgundy. Like this was, there were crazy times. There was a lot of killings. A lot of these youth were killing each other. I was going to funerals like 2 or 3 times a year, easy.
And some famous cops also.
Famous cops down there harassing people. Batman
Yeah.
and Robin harassing people. You have the crack that ran hard and heavy through there, right? So you had these young kids, and again, at that point, I'm raising young kids that a lot of their parents were not available for them. You know, whether it be single mothers or dads that are whatever in jail or this, that, and the other. And again, not all, but, you know, you had a lot of kids like that. So one of my first things was, okay, well, we came out with an album. I don't even remember what year it was. At this time, I'm doing Butta Babees stuff. I'm writing for grants. I'm getting these Canada Council grants on how to do our stuff. So I said, yo, let me flip this towards getting a grant to get these kids on a mic. So boom, we did that. I have some young people. They come out with an album. I help basically set up and build DJ stuff and a studio by the time I left there. And then I migrated out to West Haven Community Center. My daughter was born 17 years ago. I started working more in my own area in NDG. And again, I started working there, and I remember sitting there having a conversation. There were these 2 youth that I would see, and, you know, I'd see them like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning on their bicycles with brown paper bags dropping stuff at places. I'm like, bro, you know, what's going on with you? I know you have 2 older brothers that they're in the game. I see them, they're on the block hustling. But like, what's going to keep you off the streets? And at that point, West Haven had a basketball hoop, which was like a pole in the middle of cement that was in a tire. And that was as great as we got. And we had an art room where they could do arts and crafts. And I looked at these 2 young dudes. I said, like, yo, what's going to keep you off the street? Because I see you getting in the hustle, man. And you guys are like 15, 16 years old. Like, you don't need to be getting into that game. And around that time, one of the leaders of the crew out there, a dude named Streets, he actually got shot by the police. And they even used his rhyme saying, and he had rhymes that said, yo, I want to shoot the police or whatever else. They used that in a court case where, you know, he was there. So at this point,
Royal
I'm looking
peasants.
What's that?
Royal peasants.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
Which is like
I blast and the rest of that. His older brother.
Yeah, and Miriam actually from
Miriam was in
Nomadic
that
was
crew,
part of that crew
Yeah,
as well,
yeah. So then we was like, I looked at these two dudes and said, what's going to keep you off the streets? And one of them goes, yo, don't tell nobody, but I like poetry, man. I like Tupac. I like Tupac and like poetry. And the other guys, yeah, man, I like rapping, man. I like putting words together. I think I'm good at words. I said, so if I build you a studio, you're going to keep off the streets? Yeah, what the fuck? Whatever, man. Build us a fucking studio. Whatever, guys. Okay, bet. So, boom. I write a Canada Council grant. Boom. I start bringing in equipment. I got a mic. I got this and that. Those dudes are in the studio. I'm open Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 7 to 9. I literally used to put up a schedule in like half-hour blocks. And they would come through in a 2-hour span, and they would record 5 tracks. And it would be like, okay, next in the booth. Okay, you're out next. This guy's go. You got this beat. Boom, 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 bam. And they would just go in on it heavy. Some of them are still doing music. You know, one is like a happy father, but, you know, I remember him telling me, like, one of them being like, yo, you know, like, I have visions. Like, I want to kill somebody. I want to, you know, I want to be in the streets and I want to. And I was like, okay, well, let's write a rhyme about it. You know, and I'd rather have a kid. I don't remember even, I've always had that debate with people that I work with, like, is it okay you're letting these kids and they're rapping about violence and rapping about that? I said, yeah. The other option is they're out there doing it.
Right.
I said, they've been in here Tuesday, Thursday, Friday rapping about it, and they got that off their chest. And then I can sit and have a conversation. I said, yo, I noticed in that last bar you said da-da-da-da-da-da. Let's talk about it. I said, you know, like, let me get that off my chest that way. So music has always been therapeutic for me. Like, it's gotten me through whatever mood I'm in, there's a song for it, you know? So I've always used that as a tool. Now I've just kind of tried to help expose some kids. It's so funny. I got a text message from this kid. I don't even remember who it is. And he's like, I remember you at Youth in Motion, and you exposed me to hip hop, and now it's a hip hop anniversary, and I have to thank you, you know? And these kids, I remember them being 12 years old. I'm around the pool table at Youth in Motion, and I'm like, okay, so we're gonna each write a 16-bar verse. So you count your bars like this, one. And they're like, oh, okay, okay. And I'm sitting there with the little notepads and all the rest of that. And some of them even look at me like, you know, Steve, I can't really write. You know, and even that helped a lot of kids with literacy. I said, okay,
yeah,
you want to be in the crew? We can do this, but we have practices on these days, but I need you to show up for tutoring on these days, right? If you really want to be in the crew, show up for tutoring on these days.
It's a
and
good
bam,
segue, yeah, bam.
you know? You can have Tupac, the hardest thug life on his chest, I get shot, I don't care. And he can write a rap about his mother and still be hard. He's like, man, as a black man, the safest way to expose your feelings is through hip-hop, through rap. You could say whatever you want, and it's in the booth, and it's whatever else.
Safest way.
But if you start talking, like, you're on the block, you're like, you know what, I really like my mom, I love her, and da-da-da. The fuck's the matter with you, dog? What are you talking about, man? We on the street, man. But you put that a dope beat behind it, them same dudes are like, yo, I feel you, man, I feel you.
Right, because he feels the same way.
It's relatable.
Yeah, secretly he loves his mom too. You know?
Everybody does, man. What's up, mom?
And I just say one last thing about, like, what I think is unique to Montreal, especially thanks to our generation, is that, so we, the three of us, were born here, but immigrant kids from the Caribbean were still coming.
Yes.
And so we grew up with people who were still coming from other places, who had strong foundation in the culture of our families, right? So Montreal, I think, was so good for maintaining, like, we went to Soca Village and Soca Fete and reggae parties at Motions at the same time as we were, you know, honoring hip-hop culture. And I would say, Waahli, you can confirm, but it was the same for Haitians and compa parties and all that kind of stuff.
And house music, too.
House music.
House music
like,
was very powerful, too. At the same time, we were listening to house music and also hip-hop at the same time and going to Haitian party.
Yeah.
And even the DJs played, you know, hip-hop, house, and, you know, there's always one house music that everyone knew that, like, everyone was like, you know, exactly, you know, clapping hands and everything.
Trust me.
So, you know, and then also Haitian music. So that's also very interesting that these parallel cultural, musical, areas, connected very strongly together. But I want to add one thing is like also it feels like our generation growing up in the 90s hip hop, qu'est-ce qui est vraiment intéressant, c'est que, we grew up with that, black empowerment, the 5%ers and knowledge of self and, all of these messages in the music was very powerful. So not only it gave me a sense of belonging, but at the same time, a sense of responsibility. And that's where, like, the sense of responsibility, I think, when I grew up in Saint-Michel, 6-7 represent, I was like, there was none of these, like, community organization where you could actually go and make music, or, it was mostly you go there to just, like, play pool, or there was nothing about, the hip-hop. But we had all this information and all this music, and people also wanted to express themselves and find ways to express themselves. And that's why, the easiest way was, like, when you felt that sense of belonging, hip-hop came as, like, a wealth of and then
like
people, people jumped. Like, it's like, that's why I like to say that I've attended most classes in hip hop.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like,
Education.
You said a key word, education, man. I mean, we as black people, we are not learning about it in school. I remember sitting there with a history teacher, and they'd just be, okay, and then there were black people, and we brought them over slaves, and whatever. And I would challenge some of them, and they're like, yeah, look, we're not trying to talk that talk here, okay? Yeah. So we would never get that in school, but the first, times I'd be learning about black historians or black inventors is through people like KRS-One, through Malcolm X. And I would be like literally listening to his rhymes and writing down names. And then I didn't go to Google back then. I'd go to the encyclopedia.
Library.
And I would be like, okay, Malcolm, okay, this person, that person, and learning my history that way. So it definitely was a river of information that would come down to us.
No, it was a beautiful time, man. When you just said that, I was just like, nah, man, I don't see that right now. I don't see that with what's happening right now at all in the culture.
You know what is funny? I think, and this is one thing, I said it on the radio the other day, is hip hop is continuing to blow up, and like I go everywhere and you can see the influence of hip hop. And a lot of people complain about, the music coming out today and it's not got, you have a lot of really dope artists that are out nowadays. Like even including, like if you look at the stuff that you guys have made back then, does it get the exposure that you guys truly deserve? I would never, like, for you guys, I mean, as great as you guys are acknowledged and recognized, y'all should have blown up more. I'll be straight. You guys should have blown up more, right? But, like, this is also a part of, again, this system that says, wait a minute, this hip-hop thing, we could either have it empower them or we can have it drive more of them towards jail. And we could depict the stereotypes of this, that, and the other. So let's put this to the forefront.
It's better an action flick than like a serious
exactly,
drama.
Exactly. We don't want them educating themselves too much now.
The real threat is the knowledge in this case.
Yeah, and you just got to dig for it.
So we're gonna have to wrap it up. We're coming to the end of it, but I want to bounce off everything you guys just said because we're talking about transmission as well, right? You're talking about the new generation, and hip hop is about transmitting information, from one generation to the next, as through the music and through the people. All of us here are parents.
Yeah.
Right? How much of what hip hop informed in you, in your identity, in your politics, in your musical tastes, in your lifestyle? You said you walk and talk hip hop. How much of that do you pass on, or have you passed on to your children? And do they have an interest in that history? And also, did you guys ever share a hip hop moment with your children?
One time, she was celebrating her 16th anniversary and everyone was at my place. And then, and I was like, start cooking some stuff on the barbecue. And then I'm hearing Nas' album just playing. All the friends are out there in the yard and it's just
Which
like
album?
Illmatic.
Hey.
Of course.
And I was like, flipping burgers, and I'm like, start spitting the rap. Damn, son, you be out soon. Stay strong. You got some shit going on. And then
Like you, why don't you, lady, like you?
You're looking at the
I'm not even looking at them. Right?
Right?
I'm not looking at them.
It's
They
a
have their
proud
Bluetooth. I'm just super happy.
did my
Like
job.
this moment
And
of
that
like,
flipper turns into a microphone.
yeah, exactly. So just this moment of like connecting with a younger generation where, and it took the time that when she was ready to just listen, because I made her listen to a lot of albums, but she don't necessarily like the same thing. But it's great to see that on her own now, she goes and get the music that she likes. She puts it on her phone and she listens to it and she raps it, and then it's crazy to watch. And then you're like, this moment of proudness. You're like, I've done something good, what I'm saying? Because that's like an album, like it's kind of a classic.
Yeah, it's a classic.
It's like, when your kids are bumping
very
that, and it's like, I mean, so I think these moments of like passing on, music, or what I went through, it's a very magical and powerful moment.
At least you expose them to like the taste, the aesthetic.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as we all know, my son is the backup drummer, I guess, of Nomadic Massive.
Wait in.
He was
Many
just,
soundtracks.
he was
Wait
just
until
born
they graduate CJ.
He was just born and raised in this band, but has two heads as parents. So in terms of his fashion, there's no excuse. Like his fashion is straight hip hop. But I have to say, in terms of, I think in terms of how I think about my parenting style. I'm not as into the church, for example, as maybe I grew up in my community. But hip hop becomes a form of a church for the way hip hop culture becomes a form of church and values.
My kids in hip hop, I mean, they're literally born to it. Like, I'm listening to music 24/7. Even for my daughters, I remember when they were born and it was like, okay, it's time to put them to bed. I'd be, okay, I'll put them to bed. I used to have a mix and it would have some Common on it. It would have even a little bit of Talib Kweli and some smoother tracks. But I would literally take her on my shoulder and I'd rock her to bed to this music.
That's beautiful.
And I swear to God, like if I could play that mix and I usually can get them to bed in like 2 to 3 songs. And Rox would be like, oh my God, I can't go to bed. And I said, okay, come here. Press play.
And drop
Bam.
sleep.
And then they done. So
that's the beauty of the culture.
Yeah, man.
It's for the children.
The beauty of the music, man.
Guys, we want to thank you so much for being here, blessing us with your presence, with all your knowledge, that we were able to get here tonight. I think we talked about, making sure things don't get erased and archiving. So this is just part of it. This needs to happen more. And again, we appreciate you guys, everything you do, everything you've done for the culture, everything that you're about to do for us as well. So much love. Thank you for being here. Autres Langues, Nomadic Massive, pushing 20.
Peace.
We out.
Yeah.
Autres Langues.
Did you say something?
Write it down. Autres Langues.
What the hell are you talking about?
Autres Langues.